Welcome to Nameless Debate Radio, where radioactivity is contagious.
Mind describing your ethical model?
Sure. Who asked?
Hey, it's
Oh, hey, Cross. Yeah, no, I don't mind. Well, precise. So I think ethics is like how you treat other people, and I believe that you shouldn't harm other people. And I define harm as the unwarranted infringement upon a competent agent with a valid capacity of consent without demonstrated justification or further method to protect such agency. So in super simple terms, it's basically just like I think people should I think people should value the individual, but particularly value them being autonomous through social mobility as a key component, and to do so through the collective. So that like the collective part would be, for example, why I'm like very socialist in a lot of ways.
what would constitute the collective?
Math.
Well, in the instance that someone of a particular society were to breach the social contract, the laws that their country, nation, state, etc., lays down.
I mean, I make a distinction between ethics, right, which is what I think like how I think people should treat each other, and then politics as being the expression of governance through ethics. So I make that distinction.
Yeah, I'm not equating politics with, or your politics with, your ethical model, but the reason why I bring up
you should equate like I think my politics is a direct result of my ethical model, but anyway, go ahead. Sorry.
The reason why I bring up legality is because in the event where one would somehow act contradictory to your ethical model, would they still be a part of the collective?
Well, yeah, because they're like a person that affects stuff in my space. So yeah, sure.
Well, I mean, well, then what are you saying? Like, are you just gonna treat everybody the same?
So I have a view for how I think people should be, and I'm gonna argue for that view and push for it politically. And I mean, people can disagree with that, and like if they bring up a point that I think is reasonable and accept, I may change my view or part of it. But until then, I will keep pushing for what I believe, as anyone else would. And that doesn't mean that other people that don't agree are not part of the collective, because of course everyone's part of the collective. It's just a matter of like, how we go about operating within that. And so within that, I will argue for what I think is the best and try to convince people otherwise to think what I do.
Yeah, I'm not.
Right. So if you accept that, so if you accept that, then there's no disagreement.
Well, I never disagreed with you, which I think is where there may be some confusion. I don't necessarily disagree with what you've laid out. I just am confused because it seems like there may be times or instances where there may be someone within a collective who is not acting, or who is not acting in accordance to the ethical principles that you've laid out. So for instance, if part of your ethical model, just practically speaking, would be to treat others with respect, and we see that another person is disrespecting people constantly, right? Would that be justification for disrespecting that person? Or is there supposed to be a response towards their action that continues to happen? How far down the line do you go with that?
I mean, okay, so my ethics is not based on respect. Just to be clear, I assume that was just an example, though, right?
Yeah, most definitely.
Okay. So yeah, my ethics is not based on respect. If somebody's behaving in a way that I think or that my model describes as unethical, for example, right? If somebody's violating someone else's autonomy by murdering them, I believe that we should stop that person. I don't believe in punishment, but I do believe we should stop that person from, creating harm as a society.
And well,
I mean, we could get way more detailed if you'd like, but I think that a lot of my, I think that a lot of my detail can be summed up, and I want people to be able to do whatever they want as long as they're just not hurting other people in super simplistic terms. And then the hurting would be what I defined earlier.
Yeah, but and also part of your outline that you gave, it seemed like punishment not being a thing is something that you cleared up just now. Because before I wasn't sure. It seemed like after a certain point you were willing to give punishment to one who would act harmfully towards others. And it seemed like you it seemed like there was a collective that you were willing to treat according to your ethical principle, but that there may be times where an individual would warrant aggressive behavior.
My model takes all that into account, because if somebody is acting unethically, which is in violation of the principles I outlined, then we just respond accordingly with the model that we have. So, we don't punish because punishment is unethical. It violates that model, but we stop them because that stops the harm from occurring or limits it to the extent that we can. That's all.
Well, what do you mean by punish then?
What I mean by punish is for society. Understanding of punishment is for society to get revenge on a specific person or group of persons for some type of perceived injustice. And so I don't accept that as a legitimate response.
Yeah, but harm in the sense that you've defined it seems to breach one's autonomy.
I don't think so.
Well, then what do you mean by harm?
Exactly what I said. The unwarranted infringement upon a competent agent with the valid capacity of consent without demonstrated justification of further method to protect such agency. That's my view of harm.
Yeah, and when you define harm in that way, you say unwarranted in a very clear, emphasized manner. But then if it's warranted, essentially what you're saying is, well, you can do something to another person as long as they've warranted that action.
Correct. So if I grab, if I warrant the infringement upon an agent, for example, violating their autonomy, but it also saves them from becoming splatter. So, yeah, of course, my model isn't just simply autonomy. It's, well, let me be more clear. It's to say is that I think can have. I don't think though that you could just say like people can do like whatever they want, and then you would have like maximum autonomy. I think that would limit autonomy, and so my view of harm is just describing that.
Well, when you get into, at the very least from my understanding, when you get into what actions are warranted or unwarranted, which is, I guess, why I asked what would constitute the collective. It's not necessarily a slippery slope, but I'm just wondering how far down the line are you willing to go? Because depending on whatever metric one uses to evaluate a warrant, you could essentially kill an individual with justification, which I don't want to assume is your ethics or how you view that, but there is a question here that I'm still confused on.
Well, so the question is, how do you limit harm to the extent that you can? It is true that you could kill an individual. For example, if I was to like shoot somebody with a machine gun that was gunning down people in a mall, true, like I would kill somebody in preventing harm. But yeah, I think that such a thing would be justified in that self-defense moment. And I mean, it's like, if we're going to talk about details, yeah, it is very contextual insofar as determining what best follows those principles outlined based off of my values, which is how, of course, how I behave as far as like functioning with people in terms of how I try.
Well, I mean, I don't really disagree with you here, which I don't want to go out of my way to say that anyone assumed that. It's just you've outlined a very, in my opinion, broad way of acting, which I don't think
Yeah,
anyone would actually disagree with.
Well, I mean, of course, plenty of people disagree because people like have very fundamentally different values sometimes. But yeah, it is broad. That's why you need to clarify what do you mean by warranted. What do you mean by competent agent? What do you mean by capacity for consent? And like, of course, that can be clarified. It's just that's like, those are the principles, right, that you start with, and then you clarify the stuff as you go. Like, you clarify it below, right?
True. My thing is, you there doesn't seem to be a hard cap here. Doesn't seem to be a, is there a particular thing that you wish to savor? It's more just making sure that you have a level of security, I suppose, within
Individuality.
your ethics.
It's like I was mentioning to him. It's individuality. Model, the collective.
Yeah, I'm also not really like, by collective, are you referring to sapience? Are you referring to our environment? Are you referring to
By collective, I'm referring to competent agents. I'm referring. I mean, essentially, for our purposes, sapiens. But
yeah.
like, I mean, I think my model like takes into account animals. I think it takes into account aliens, or whatever else. It's just, it's not based off of like species or in anything anything at all like that.
I mean, okay.
Cool. I am writing down like my entire worldview. I don't know if I mentioned this, but I am, and so like, you're welcome to read some of it if you'd like.
Sure.
Cool. I mean, it's still, so I'm pretty well studied, but like I haven't integrated my ideas to the extent that I would like, which is why I'm like rewriting my worldview. And yeah, you can read you can read some of it. Basically, though, it starts with establishing logic, and then it establishes logic, and then it establishes like truth and knowledge and like math, and it establishes well, from there, what it does is it goes to like distinguishing between like people and like the world around people, and it establishes it establishes how we should treat each other, and that with ethics, and then it establishes things like the scientific method, etc. So
Yeah, sure.
yeah. I guess what I'm saying is like I think a lot of the substance I have in there is good. There are quite a bit of, like, there's quite a bit of polishing that needs to be done. And there's also quite a bit of substance that still needs to be added. Like, for example, I'm mainly through chapter 1, so what seems like 4 other chapters on that specific document.
Yeah, I haven't writing books is hard. So like kudos to you, dude. It's a huge undertaking.
Thanks. I just have that. That's my idea. Like, say if I have an issue with X and I don't know how to solve, I can go back to my foundation and find the answer that I'm looking for and build back up so that I can solve. See?
Yeah, it seems reasonable.
Yeah. So that's basically what I'm trying to do.
I mean, you sound tired, so I don't want to like keep you up or anything.
No. I have to stay up. I'm legitimately forced to stay up because, like, if I don't, what'll happen is the world will end. Nah, Yep.
Actually, I just remembered this because I'm looking at your roles. Can you explain how you're both an atheist and an agnostic?
Yeah, that's easy. So agnosticism refers to knowledge in terms of like objective truth in the sense of like, okay, well, what is actually going on in reality? I don't know. Like, I don't capital K know. And that's all agnostic means from the Greek. And then atheist means what I believe. So going back to the whole like what's actually going on in reality. It's like, so agnosticism refers to what is going on in reality, which I obviously don't know. And then belief refers to what I think is going on in reality. And so I don't believe that a God exists, but I don't know one does exist. Hence the agnosticism. And then my atheism, which I don't know if I have a role for it here, but my atheism is I also don't know. I also reject the belief that a possibility for a God or gods exist. So my position on God is I don't know. And then my, in a sense, is I don't know, and that's it.
I mean, true. You don't believe that a God in any capacity is real, and I'm wondering why.
Because I've not seen evidence to suggest it is.
Well, what do you consider evidence?
I don't know. I mean, you'd have like being, and then, you know, maybe we could establish some criteria of evidence based off of that. But I also think that, say, if a God does exist, that God would know what evidence they would need to present if they wanted.
Well, I'm more just trying to gauge your own worldview, because while I understand, not necessarily agnostics, but
It's
atheists.
just like a lot of people have different, and so, I mean, you know, like what type, like what are we talking about? If you say like, hey, that chair to the left of me is God, okay, well, I would like contest why, like I would think it's silly you're saying that's like God, but like, you know, and I would question if you're saying that like it has any sort of like special properties, say outside of nature, outside of something we have demonstrated. But you know, like I could accept that in a sense of that physical object being there, but insofar as like accepting that, you know, that like that's like special in any way, like I wouldn't like, and so like a lot of it depends, like what do people mean, and like, you know, how do we base like determining whether that's actually true or not, you know. And so that's where the evidence would come from, I think. And if and my point about if a God exists, it would know, is that like if a God did exist and was trying to convince me, I'm not saying that like all theists think that like a God is concerned with that. I'm just saying that like if theists do, then I think that God would know what it would take to convince me. That's all.
That, well, I suppose now I'm asking, what do you mean by God specifically?
I don't. It's what other people mean by God or gods. So I base my understanding of that. Like I could give like vague answers and tell you, well, I think like a lot of people mean God as this or that. But I mean, that's, you know, that's not all encompassing, for sure. So I'd rather just have like somebody that believes a God exists tell me what they think that means. Certainly, I mean, I could again give general answers. Like I don't accept that Almighty, or like some type of like all powerful agent exists. I don't accept that. And a lot of people would say that could be, you know, a God. So that's what they mean. Okay.
Well, why do you reject that premise?
The same reason I reject all other premises that people say with respect to a God. I don't see evidence of it.
Oh. Are you saying that are you saying it's an impossibility, or just that you don't believe it?
No, I'm not saying it's an impossibility. I'm just not saying that it's that I believe it, A, and B, that it is a possibility. The possibility is with respect to the ig-theism, ig-theism, and the rejection of belief of whether it exists is with respect to the atheism. See, atheism, to lack theism, and then ig-theism is it's a rejection of, like in both cases, it's a rejection of a claim, but it's just they're both rejections of different claims.
I mean, it just seems like in order to convince you of an all-powerful agent within our universe, if there is one, there's a level of proof that they would have to know and enact in order to convince you that they exist.
What do you mean they will?
God?
Oh, no, not necessarily. It's just like, is there something I identify as evidence that would compel me to believe this? And that goes for anything. And if there is, then okay, I'll believe it. If not, okay, I won't. That's simple. And it's not my job to like it's not my job to like provide evidence for this stuff. It's the job of the people that believe it. Like, it's not my fault that they haven't been able to come up with anything compelling.
That's what I'm saying is that this proof that you are saying you would need in order to believe God existing is something that you have not thought of.
I mean, there's some general ideas, but yeah, I've not like worked out a model for something that is like for something that you'd need many models to have, because it's not my job, right? It's the job.
I'm just curious. I'm not really.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm just explaining why I don't have, like, why I didn't do that, you know?
Well, it's more like cults and institutionalized religion. I've witnessed people convert into different denominations, different churches, different sects, and the like. And I suppose the common thing, or the typical trend there, is that there's something within their life that resonates with whatever doctrine they end up subscribing to, at the very least at the time. So I'm wondering what things would be, what things would ring true to you that would lead credence to God's existence?
So I sent you the model, like my worldview that I'm working.
Yeah, sorry.
That's okay. What I think is true in that, one could use to establish a criteria of evidence that may be able to, were that evidence true for their particular God claim, because it's important to stress that, like, there's tons and tons and tons and tons of one convincing for X, like, God claim, but not because the structure of the two things are different.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. The most recently, I had a discussion with an atheist, and the conversation went so far on contradictions. I couldn't, like, they weren't really helping their case, and it leads me to be more interested, to want to talk to other more grounded atheists, because
Well, if atheism is just a specific position on a specific claim, yeah, like, doesn't make somebody, like, inherently like really, like, and somebody smarter, for sure. You have plenty of bad atheists, obviously. I don't know the specific person, but, say, pointing out contradictions in like, say, a Bible, when those contradictions are not appropriate to point out, and they're not appropriate because they don't relate to what people are talking about, then, I mean, yeah, that's an obvious problem. Like, if someone's talking about a deistic God and someone's pointing out contradictions in, like, a Bible that person doesn't accept, then it's, like, silly. So yeah, I mean, sure, you'll encounter stuff like that. It's silly, but
yeah, I'm hoping to talk a bit more with others. I mean, the last time I was interested in these types of conversations, essentially, there was just a bunch of people who were using science and or law as ways to disprove God's existence, which didn't really.
well, stuff, to be clear, you can use stuff like that to an extent, right, to disprove some God's existence, but it depends on, like, the God claim that we're talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's more that people were trying to. So, for instance, there's this idea that anything can happen through God or through the blood of Christ or whatever, right? But at the same time, the counter offer or counter claim is certain things cannot happen because only the only things that can happen in our reality are things that act in accordance to the laws of our reality. So I get the scientific perspective from there, and I also understand the religious perspective.
Well, it's worth pointing out. So science, like, so truth is dealt with in philosophy, and then science like takes that model that we have, like generally say of truth, and it establishes a model of an idea of testing that idea rigorously, etc., to like better describe the reality we've established of truth. And so like literally, like science's models of reality, it's not like truth itself, because truth itself is what justifies the model in science. As far as like what like other like people that call themselves atheists you've talked to, I don't know, like if there's like people that like call themselves atheists and are really stupid, and this, it's the same with like you'll find like dumb people that call themselves Christians, or like smart people that call themselves Christians or Muslim or whatever. It doesn't mean much. It's just like, that's how people are. The question is like on the substance of what's actually being talked about. And I know I can only talk about what I understand with relation to the ideas and stuff around me.
Well, okay, so if okay, hold on, give me a second. I think I have an idea. I'm trying to. If we use logic in order to make understanding of our reality, and our reality is true, how would our reality simply exist and not be created by something? I suppose would be how a creationist would phrase the question.
How would our reality exist and not be created by something? Well, no one is saying that it isn't. At least like any developed atheist, they would just say that they don't know, which I think is the appropriate answer. We like, in terms of, so if we're talking about like how the arcane came into being, right? We don't have an answer for that. And to say there is like really bad, because you're saying something that you don't have grounds to say. I think the correct answer is just we don't know. And that's like that's a very okay answer. Like, if you don't honestly know, it's very okay to say you don't know.
Well, yeah, maybe atheism has a different meaning, popularly speaking. It just like the atheists that I am used to claim to know, and they claim to know that there is no God. And
I mean,
sorry.
Talking to specifically, but like, and disprove certain gods. Of course, you can't disprove all gods, because like there's sort of unfalsifiable claims, but that's okay, because you don't have to falsify all God claims. You just like don't have to accept claims that haven't been shown to be true. So in that sense, I mean, like I don't know if the people you're talking to may be saying that like they can prove some gods don't exist. Certainly, if they're saying they can prove all gods don't exist, well then, like if that's what they're like honestly saying, then they're just like they don't have good grounds in philosophy, and they should study more. But that's not my experience with atheists in general. But it depends. I mean, you have a lot of dumb atheists. That's like an easy thing for me to accept, because I've
I mean, the guy that I was referring to, uh, if I understand his viewpoint is that there is no God, that all gods that we know of are mythos and mythos only, and that value in the sense of significance or worth is something that is like a purely subjective thing and is man-made. So like there is nothing special about the universe does not matter to itself, and there has been nothing that created the universe.
I mean, yeah, so like, because you there with regard to like something create the universe, yeah, the answer that we currently have is we don't know. With regard to like, is there what is? I mean, like, I think that there's value in what is, and I think that like we establish value, certainly like certainly you could say we establish value from our perception, and if that's what he's saying, then like yeah, I think that would be true. As far as all gods being like from mythos, I yeah, I don't think like theists that have claims of God outside of mythos. So if that's what he's saying, then that wouldn't be correct. Basically, 2 out of 3, like I'm sorry, 1 out of 3 is correct, at least from what you described his positions to be.
It just seemed his view, at the very least, whether it's true to atheism or not, which it seems like it's not according to you. It's
no, I'm not like, so if you okay, if you believe, like if you are claiming, right, that no gods exist, so like that entails atheism, a rejection of the claim that gods do exist, but then that's also adding an additional claim exist. So like I mean he is, it's just like he sounds like, it sort of sounds like he's what's sometimes called a strong atheist, or also sometimes called anti-theism. I mean, I don't know what this person's like specific positions are, so like, I'm not gonna speculate too deep on that. It's just like he from what you described, he would be an atheist, just like just not a strong atheist or an anti-theist. Because you have different types of atheism. That's my point.
I mean, my true gripe with his or no, yeah, actually, my true gripe with his viewpoint essentially was like, for example, a contradiction that he would have was that in speaking on philosophy, what is, how things ought to be, or no, not how things are to be, more what is. He set a clear ground rule. That ground rule being there is no evidence within philosophy. But then later on in the conversation, when it came to, for instance, the premise that a creator existed or was real, he said that he rejected that premise off of the fact that he saw no evidence.
Like, was he talking? I'm confused. Was he talking? So when he says there's no evidence in philosophy, is he saying philosophy in general? About with respect to the God claim?
I think he meant in general. It seemed like.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's like obviously silly. All philosophy is the foundation of every other subject. I mean, insofar as like there's other subjects and stuff, and evidence within them, there's evidence within philosophy for that. Again, I don't know. Like, I don't like wanna. I don't want to assume what he thinks though, but I'll take your word for it.
No, I'm like, that was a verbatim thing that he said. So I didn't. It's more like, and I think you're understanding my gripes with it was that there were things that just didn't seem to make sense. And even under those lines of reasoning, there were still contradictions that I found with his responses and how he thought.
You are making the very difficult claim that there are atheists with very developed views. It's a very strong claim you're making, sir.
I tried to invite him here, but he didn't. I don't think he wants to, and he's not like a guy who likes voice chatting. So
I mean, I don't voice chat that often, so it's whatever. But I'm willing to talk to him if he wants. It's up to him. I don't care.
I mean,
if he wants to message me and be like, "Hey, DM, why are you an atheist?" I will easily explain why I am, and why I'm an atheist, and why I'm agnostic, and anything else that he wants to ask me that I think I can explain.
I have a feeling if I tried to facilitate that conversation, he would take it as an insult. At the moment, we're not really getting along right now. So.
Oh, I see. Well, whatever. I don't know much about the social interactions with regard to your specific thing. So do whatever. I don't know. I'm just focusing on the ideas, and I'll be right back a second.
Thank you for listening. Like, share, subscribe, and join us in the Nameless Debates Discord. We hope to see you there.